And Megan Fox here at PJ Media is explaining.
What's tip 4?
Well, don't trust women. I think you just touched on that with your Dancing with the Stars.
You can still love me.
I do. I love you all the time.
Our First Amendment rights are huge. They are very important to me. They should be important to everyone.
Don't be a public official if you don't want to be filmed, ma'am.
Megan Fox.
Yes.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the show. I'm Megan Fox, medium smart journalist. I write at pjmedia.com, and I'm here with Spike Cohen of You Are the Power. You can find his link in the description, by the way. Spike's back to talk about all the updates in the Georgia cases we were following here on this channel. There was the Hernandez case, and there's other families involved in this as well. Spike, I put up a poll. I thought we should give the chat a minute to answer the poll. My poll was, after being notified that the state made a mistake, the state of Georgia did what? 1, obviously gave the children back. 2, made everything worse. So chat, let's see. You are the ones who get to choose in this poll. So far, 79% of you say made everything worse. And a few of you, now it's 80, 17% thinks obviously they returned the children. So what happened, Spike? Did the government just decide, hey, we're wrong, we made a mistake, let's give the babies back since they have underlying medical conditions and are not victims of abuse?
Yeah, I have some terrible news for that 17% that said that's, well, I guess it's terrible news for everyone. The government doubled down and, in fact, demonstrated the reason why they do this. These aren't mistakes. There is, thanks to the funding that they receive from the Social Security Act, but from the federal government, they're essentially incentivized to call as many cases as possible abuse. And it's not like they have to give the money back if it turns out not to be abuse. So instead, what they do is they get the money, they call it abuse, they let it play out in court. And what we're seeing is there's sort of this kick the can down the road effect. The child abuse pediatrician will often say, yeah, it could be abuse. So if I don't call it abuse and something ends up happening, that'll fall on me and we don't get any money. But if I do call it abuse, then we get all of that money. And if something happens, if it turned out it was actually abuse, then I did the right thing. I'll let the next, person down the chain actually figure out if it is abuse or not. But the problem is everyone's doing that. All the way down the line are people going, yeah, we'll just err on the side of calling it abuse. And so you end up in a situation with not only are parents being guilty until proven innocent, because it's being done in a family court that doesn't have the same standard of due process and presumption and so forth, they end up being guilty with no ability to prove themselves innocent. And in fact, right now, the Sullivan family, Diana and Corey Sullivan, are in court yesterday, today, and tomorrow to find out if they're ever going to see their children again.
Oh my God. Are they doing like a permanency hearing? Like,
I believe that's what it is. Yes. So the judge had already ordered non-reunification. And so they're in court now to fight to stop that. Now,
on what basis does the judge order non-reunification in a scenario where it's clear nobody knows what's wrong with the baby? Other than there's experts who've said it's Ehlers-Danlos, right?
It's likely, and I believe that actually has been diagnosed. Diana, the mother, does have Ehlers-Danlos. And I'm sorry, I'm pulling up what because we do have a diagnosis for Amelia. Her diagnosed health conditions were intrauterine growth retardation, anemia, low platelets, limited bone mineral deposition, delayed bone development, hypochloremic acidosis, generalized demineralization of the spine, and softness of the bones. Those were all diagnosed in utero and post-birth. It's all but certain that Amelia also has Ehlers-Danlos. And so, but because Barbara Knox, a single child abuse pediatrician, said, I believe this is abuse, that's the entirety of their case. And despite
Barbara Knox has a horrific history. She's been fired from other hospitals. She's been asked to leave. She's been forced out. There's been letter campaigns, lawsuits. I went over the lawsuit against Barbara Knox here on this channel a while ago. She has done this over and over and over again, and she just keeps moving from state to state to state, where if you just happen to be the unlucky family that brings your child into the ER the night that Barbara Knox is on duty, you're losing your kid to child abuse. Like it's... there's something wrong with her. Like, is there anything that's being done as far as bringing the attention to the authorities that this woman is a serial false accuser?
Well, I think the authorities know. What we're doing is bringing it to the public's attention. This increasingly, the more you get into cases, not just like this, but all sorts of cases that You Are the Power takes on. This is not a problem of the proper authorities not knowing all the facts. This is that the public doesn't know what the proper authorities are doing to them. And then when the public finds out and puts pressure on them to back off and do the right thing, they often do. This is not the right people don't know. It's the public doesn't know. And so the so-called right people get away with doing it. This is more of a feature than a bug in the system. Barbara Knox has resigned in disgrace from multiple healthcare systems, all of whom have done investigations against her for a pattern of misdiagnosing children as being abused and of pressuring her colleagues and people that worked under her to do the same. So not only did she misdiagnose kids, she'd put pressure on other people that worked in that healthcare system to misdiagnose kids as being abused. In the, I believe it was Alaska Cares system, every single person that worked in that system resigned because of her.
Yeah, this is unbelievable. And I don't know what has happened with the lawsuit in that case. I'm not sure if it has. Do you know if it has come to completion yet? She's being sued by several.
Had not, no.
Okay.
I believe it's still an open suit. And she right now works at Wolfson Children's Hospital in Jacksonville, Florida. And because of its proximity to the Florida-Georgia line, a lot of Georgia families, as well as many Florida families, their children are brought to Wolfson Children's. In fact, many of them are often medevaced there if the child has a very serious presentation of something. And if Barbara Knox is the child abuse pediatrician that sees that child, it is very likely that that child will be misdiagnosed as being abused.
And this blonde Karen on the top here, that would be Barbara Knox. She's the child abuse pediatrician who has taken many children from parents and these children have underlying medical conditions, but Barbara Knox decides that they're being abused. Underneath of her here is the Sullivan family. Are both the twins out of their care or just Amelia?
Both the twins as well as their older daughter, Arabella.
Oh God, they took them all. Now, last I heard, they were the children were at least living with, I think, Diana's mother, correct?
I believe so. Yes. I'm sorry. We worked with so many of these families. Some of the details I'm trying to remember, and I believe at the last time it was with Diana's mother. But in 2 or 3 months ago now, the judge ordered non-reunification, which they're now fighting. We actually have people. I was hoping to get an update by the time we went live, but they haven't. I guess they haven't.
Let me ask you a question. How do we do non-reunification when they've placed the children with their grandmother? Is the grandmother never supposed to have a relationship with her own daughter and son-in-law?
I believe the grandmother is a temporary fictive kin, or not fictive kin, kin for them to live with. I believe if non-reunification is ordered and made permanent, that they'll be placed for adoption.
Oh my God! How does this judge justify this when there were, as far as I know, this was not an outrageous case of abuse. These were unexplained swellings, bruisings that led to all this medical inquiry that then discover, hey, Diana's got Ehlers-Danlos. Ehlers-Danlos makes your ligaments very weak and your things come out of, what do you call it? The sockets all the time. And there can be bruising, there can be swelling, they're hyper flexible. There's other things that can go, bone density problems. Like, it explains all of this. And the male twin, he does not have this. right?
Christian does not. No, Christian during the pregnancy, they actually had two separate placentas, and Christian grew normally, and I believe had no incident at all, and continues not to. Arabella had multiple incidents. When she was born, it was at, I believe, less than, it was either just under or just over 3 pounds, which is in the bottom 3 percentile of birth weights. And she was diagnosed both in utero and after birth with a variety of different health conditions, the ones I just listed. And then, yeah, we found out that Diana has Ehlers-Danlos. It's very likely that that Amelia does as well. And it's insane. And to answer your question, it's the same way that so many of the family court judges simply refuse to look at the medical evidence. The problem is all of these systems are funded by calling it abuse. And from what we've seen, it appears that when they take the child away and call it abuse, they get money. Whenever the children are placed in foster care, they get even more money.
They get money.
If the children are permanently taken from the family, they get even more money. And then if it's later determined that the child has a chronic health condition, they get even more money and longer term money to help deal with that adopted child's condition. So when these child abuse pediatricians and really everyone down that line, the child protective service workers, the family court judges, everyone down that pipeline, which is basically a child trafficking pipeline, when they see a kid with a chronic health condition, they think they've hit the jackpot.
They've hit the jackpot. Yeah, people get real nervous when we start saying CPS is doing a version of child trafficking, because they think that we're going down the Q road, where the government is a child abusing nightmare. But that's not the case. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when we say child trafficking, we mean there's an amount of money that's placed on the head of every child in this nation if the government has to step in. We know Spike here is a very famous libertarian. He's run for office. He knows, his Twitter is hilarious. You guys need to be on his Twitter, Real Spike Cohen, because I love your Twitter is usually the highlight of my day, Spike. I love your anti-government stance. What has the state ever done that's any good? When the state gets a hold of things, they ruin it every single time. Even the good they try to do, they screw up somehow. And so all these laws are written with the intention of saving children, helping children who are abused, right? And who are neglected. Those children we totally know exist. I mean, we hope that they are being taken care of by these institutions. But then we come across these stories where, like in Illinois, I talk about this one all the time, where you have a little boy who CPS has visited his house 17, 18 times. And on time 19, his parents kill him. Finally, we have CPS workers who went to jail for that. That was the AJ Frond case. But you rarely see the government pay for the mistakes they make that ends in a child's death. And yet they do it every day. They don't take children from homes that are truly abusive. And there are signs everywhere, red flags. I have social workers calling me, emailing me, sending me DMs, telling me, I don't know if I can stay here anymore. My supervisors will not allow me to remove this child from an obviously dangerous home. And I have people, I talk to them all the time. These are social workers who really want to do the right thing, but their supervisors are not allowing it. And so then their supervisors are telling them you need to take these children, and there's no real evidence that they're being harmed. So you have the opposite of these two like crazy scenarios, and it's like the government is always doing the wrong thing. Why is this? Why can't they do what they're hired to do? Find the abuse, the ones who are actually being abused, take care of those children, and leave everybody else the hell alone. Why can't we do this?
That you actually touched on it. They aren't hired to do it. They impose themselves as the solution to it. And when you impose yourself as a monopoly on any kind of provision of service and say, you must fund us, you must allow us to be the sole provider of this authority. And if you choose not to, we can use whatever level of violence is necessary to force you into compliance. You're not going to get good return on your forced investment there. And here's how that plays out with this. Child Protective Services, for quite some time now, receive the bulk of their money at the federal and state level for a specific outcome. They are subsidizing a specific outcome. It's not for every case you take on, it's every time we call it abuse. And so what ends up happening is you get this inversion where Child Protective Services becomes a kind of predator that looks for the easiest prey to be able to slap the abuse label on and run their kids through the pipeline until they're in many cases taken from them permanently. And so what that means is if you have an actual case of abuse, well, those parents are probably going to try to cover their tracks. They're not going to cooperate with authorities. They're going to do other things because they know they're actually guilty. And I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying that if you don't cooperate with authorities that you're guilty. I'm a big advocate of not cooperating with authorities and
Right.
not
It's a
talking to police
difficult-
unless you have a lawyer
It's a
present.
difficult line. That's a good thing you brought up here, though. But
Yeah.
it's a very difficult line, Spike, because if you insist on your rights with CPS,
Yeah.
I know lawyers who work with CPS every day. Their advice is do everything they tell you to do. Everything.
Yeah.
It's like this. You must comply. You must do everything they tell you. Don't give them a hint that you aren't complying. You can't demand your rights with these people, because the second you do, the second you say, no, you need a search warrant. No, you need, I want a lawyer. My kids need a lawyer. They just double down to get you just because they get pissed. This is a very malicious force we're dealing with here. And that's unfortunate, because asserting your rights with these people, very, very thin line. Very hard.
It is a thin line, but what we're seeing is when people cooperate immediately, when people just give them whatever they want, it actually makes it easier for them to take the kids, because they're applying the police tactic of just keep asking questions, keep letting you talk, and then look for anything that they could potentially say could be used against you. Remember, when your rights are read to you, they say anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. They never say anything that you say can and will be used for you in a court of law. They're looking to create as many offenders of as many offenses as possible. And so, yes, they are very difficult about people that assert their rights. But I will tell you, it is the ones that lawyered up and refuse to cooperate. And when I say refuse to cooperate, I mean within legal guidelines.
Right.
They asserted their rights. Those are the ones that, they got a real tough time, but they still have their kids. And it's unfortunately what happens is they become a predator that goes after easy prey. And so it's the innocent parents, the ones that are not familiar with the legal process and the legal system, that go, yes, please, here, let me tell the police whatever I need to say. I know I did nothing wrong. And they're the ones that get railroaded.
Yeah, I always tell people, people who contact me who say that CPS has been calling or whatever, my only piece of advice is get a lawyer immediately. Do not do any of this by yourself. Don't talk to them by yourself. Don't let your kids be interviewed by themselves. Get a lawyer. Hire one for your kids if you have to.
Yeah, and get one with that has history in this.
In
dealing with child
in your
protective
county.
services.
In your county, because if you don't have somebody who's familiar, sometimes they do that thing too, where they treat your attorney because he's out of town or whatever as the outside enemy. And you really need somebody who works with these people on a daily basis that has a rapport. It's a very scary scenario to be in. Very, very scary. So Spike, tell me, I'm still, my head, I can't wrap this reunification thing with the judge and the Sullivans. I can't. There was no evidence of abuse. Their older daughter, she didn't have any bruises. There was no evidence of abuse on her. No evidence of abuse on the little boy. But we have the little girl who has the unexplained issues, which can obviously be, we can say that it's an underlying medical condition, or it certainly needs to be further investigated. Why is this family one that the government is targeting for non-reunification, to split them up forever? I know of cases, Spike, every day in CPS where parents literally actually abuse their children and they still keep them because the state is supposed to work with them and supposed to give them anger management classes. So if you hit your kid, if you actually do haul off and hit your kid and the government catches you, they send you to these classes, you take them, and then they have a reunification plan and you go back together with your kids. If you have a drug problem, if you have an alcohol problem, you can get your kids back. So why are these people being targeted to never see their children again? What is happening, Spike? Please explain this to me. I don't get it.
It looks to us that the reason that this is happening to this family is that their child was put in front of Barbara Knox and presented with multiple fractures at various stages of healing. And if a child, from what we can see, if a child is brought in front of Barbara Knox with bruising, swelling, fractures of any kind, it gets labeled abuse. Again, this is a doctor that has been run out of multiple. She's, as far as I know, never been fired. She's always had to be resigned. She's always resigned in the midst of investigations and lawsuits and everything else. And then she just, she graduates up. She fails upward. She finds another place to do what she's doing. And I wish I could say she's an outlier, but it looks like the difference is if your child gets put in front of the wrong child abuse pediatrician, or you're put in front of the wrong family court judge, they'll derail you. And
we've been tracking several of these people. Barbara Knox, another one that you've been working with. What's the one in the Hernandez case? What's Pena? Dr. Pena?
Stephen Messner is involved in that case.
Messner and Pena.
Pena, yeah.
Yeah, Pena, we went over his PowerPoint presentation he put on YouTube here on this channel, which was insane. His red flags for child abuse is literally a breastfeeding mom. He has such a low bar for child abuse. A mom who doesn't put sunscreen on their kid, a mom who puts too much sunscreen on their kid, a kid who's obese, a kid who's underweight. These are equally reasons to take kids away from parents, according to him. There's so many medical conditions. I could have been a victim of this because I had a baby. My first baby had failure to thrive. She was just underneath the thing, the scale that they're always measuring all babies to. She was just underneath, and she was always very small. I actually was with a pediatrician at the time who started to threaten me that if I didn't go for all these invasive tests for gastric problems and this and that I would be investigated by child welfare. And I was like, oh, great. Okay. Bye-bye. And I never saw them again. I left and went somewhere else. And I got another doctor who looked at my baby and said, she's absolutely fine. Keep nursing. And that doctor wanted to make me stop breastfeeding. This is one reason why breastfeeders are at a disadvantage. If you happen to get in front of a doctor, and this was the case in this one, and also the Hernandez's case, I believe, when you don't know your child has a bone density problem, and you're exclusively nursing, that bone density problem can get worse because your breast milk may lack. If you have a vitamin D deficiency, or the baby does, they need extra vitamin D. And if you don't know that, and you just keep breastfeeding or whatever, this can make it worse. Well, they then turn around and blame mom because you didn't want to put your baby on gross formula or whatever. This is your fault. Instead of finding out, hey, they need a vitamin D boost. This is just, it's outrageous to me that this is still happening.
How dare you not instantly know the vitamin D content level of your
breast milk? Yes.
In a not psychopathic way of dealing with that would be for the doctor, the pediatrician, to say, hey, it looks like you have a vitamin D deficiency. Here are the things we can do. Either you take a supplement, or the baby takes some kind of supplementation,
or you both take a supplement, or supplement with other things.
Whatever it is, not we're going to presume that you're an abusive parent or a neglectful parent and take your child from you. In fact, it's actually a good thing that your initial pediatrician didn't report you for seeking a second opinion. We dealt with that in Texas. A woman by the name of Jocelyn Sanders, when her child Josiah got sick, and the first pediatrician recommended clindamycin. Well, she looked up clindamycin and saw, that it had a black box warning and one of the most dangerous antibiotics. And so she got a second opinion. The second doctor said, oh, no, Bactrin should be fine. But the first pediatrician contacted the authorities, who did not bother to find out that she had gone to another pediatrician and she had her child taken and has been fighting that as well. And
why should the government be involved in which antibiotic you give your child? This is an outrageous overreach, Spike.
Yeah. And in this case, it was they didn't want to find out, or they didn't bother to find out that she had gone to another pediatrician, and that she had simply gotten a second opinion and was following through on that pediatrician's recommendations. They went with what the first pediatrician said, which was that she's refusing to treat the child. The child's sick and it's an exigent circumstance. So they took the child. The child ended up, Josiah ended up having seizures and all sorts of other problems because they put the child on clindamycin. And this is a baby. I forget the exact age. It wasn't newborn, but it was a matter of weeks or months old. And thankfully the child survived, but the clindamycin almost killed him.
Oh
And
my
and
God.
this is the kind of things that happen. And you ask, why is government involved? And it's because it involved itself. I don't think
Don't they have
anyone,
enough to do than
you
poring
would
over
think.
the medical records of and this is the thing that gets me. It's like these creating these positions of child abuse pediatrician, and you don't even know that this person works for the state. And they're wandering around the children's hospital, just, seeking out whom they can destroy. And it's really sickening that parents mostly don't even know who these people are or what they do. We saw in the Kowalski case. Sally Smith never identified herself to those parents as being an agent of the state. They thought she worked
Yeah.
for the hospital. They thought, so they should talk to her. They should be open with her. They should tell her everything. It turns out she's an agent of the state, and they had rights, and they didn't have to incriminate themselves. They didn't have to talk to her about anything. And yet this woman, they're just allowed. I think they should have to wear signs around their necks and come with Miranda warnings. If you speak to me, anything you say to me can and will be held against you in a court of law because you're under investigation. They should have to Mirandize parents so that they know right away, I'm under investigation. Otherwise, it's like this sneaky entrapment process that our police aren't allowed to do. So how come they can do it as agents of the state?
In many states, they can't, but still do. And the problem is, when they do get caught, they claim qualified immunity, and they almost always get it.
They always get it.
I want to go back to what I said when I said child trafficking, because I don't want people to think I'm saying that the children are being taken to Mars for, lizard pedophiles.
They're in underground tunnels.
Yeah. I'm not saying
none of
that.
that's true.
The definition of child trafficking is the illegal taking of a child from an innocent family to give to another family or to someone else for a financial incentive. In these cases where children are being unjustly taken, they are violating their own rules. They're doing so illegally under the color of law. The problem is they're the ones in charge of enforcing the law. So, they get away with it. It's under the color of law, but it's illegal and against their own processes when they do it. So by every standard, it meets the criteria for child trafficking.
Yes, and Sean McMillan, by the way, I don't know if I ever connected you with Sean, Spike, but I need to if I haven't. Sean McMillan is an incredible lawyer in California who fights CPS all day long. And because of his 1983 civil rights cases that he's brought against CPS in Orange County and several other county, LA County, they have actually had to stop taking kids without warrants. Because of him, he's won millions of dollars against them. And because they do these things, like you said, under the color of law. Well, that's against our Constitution, and you can sue them in federal court for it. The problem is getting your kids back first. You have to get them back before you can sue the state over their civil rights violations, because if you start suing them before you get them back, it's just it's a no-go. You're just they're going
to punish you in family court for it. Yeah.
And this could take years. I mean, look at Rachel Bruno. Rachel Bruno is such a great story about this. She got a great lawyer who right off the bat, when she was accused of something the nanny did, and they never bothered to actually interview the nanny. Her lawyer told her, you're going to go in, we're going to do everything they tell us to do. I'm going to get you out of this. We're going to get your kids back. Then you sue. So keep your mouth shut until, this is done. And sure enough, she was able to. And then Sean McMillan sued the hospital, sued the state, and they won millions. And that's what should happen. That's what should happen. In these cases, we need to introduce Sean to these cases, because oh my God, do they have a lawsuit when it finally comes out what they did. Welcome, Legal Vices Raid. Thanks for raiding the chat. Legal Vices. Jeff, if you're here, say hi. We're talking to Spike Cohen from You Are the Power. He's been platforming these families who've had medical kidnappings because of underlying conditions in their children. They've been falsely accused of abuse, most like the Maya Kowalski story. And so that these don't end in a tragic way, like the Maya Kowalski story did. Yeah. We're trying to bring attention to this because in the Maya Kowalski story, Beata Kowalski ended up taking her own life because of what the state had done. She knew she was the thing standing in the way from her child being back with her family. So she ended up removing herself. This cannot happen. in a regular basis. When we see it happening, we have to say something. Now, we've done letter writing campaigns, Spike, for both these families. We did a letter writing campaign for the Hernandezes. We did one for the Sullivans. Did it do any good? Are they any closer? Are the Hernandezes? I know the last I heard from the Hernandez case, they still were not back with their parents, but they had been moved back in with their aunt and uncle. So at least they were with family. Do we have any forward movement on that one at all?
So that's the forward movement has been that Matt and Taki Hernandez, after nearly a year of legal estrangement, where in order for Matt and Taki Hernandez to be able to get bail, to be allowed to get to bail out and go home, they had to agree not to talk to each other, live together, or be within however many feet or yards of each other. And so they legally estranged them, which is a pressure tactic they use. It's like, hey, just give up your kids and you get to live together. Or, admit that you did this terrible thing and, maybe we'll do this long reunification process and one day you might get your kids back, but you've also pled guilty to this crime that you didn't commit. And it's a pressure tactic. They are living back together as husband and wife. Those bond conditions were dropped. The family court judge, whose name is escaping me, I believe it's Heather Dunn is the name of her of their
yeah
judge.
that sounds right.
She went from one extreme of refusing to allow their medical experts to even present the information that their children weren't being abused. She took a complete 180 and basically nullified the CPS case and said, I will drop this entire thing as soon as the criminal charges are dropped. I can't drop it until the criminal charges until the indictment is until the indictment is dropped and the charges are dropped. So she's done the judge, after getting thousands of angry emails and social media mentions, inexplicably took a 180-degree turn and is now fully in support of all of this being ended for the family.
But it's still not over. They're still not back with them.
We're still trying to fight to get the
criminal charges are not dropped.
The fight is to get the criminal charges dropped.
How is that? Is there any movement on that at all? Has there been an arraignment? Is there a hearing set? Is there a trial date?
Nothing. And here's why. Because the moment that if they actually took it to trial,
they lose.
Now you have discovery. Now
this
you have
shouldn't be legal that they can just charge people and then sit on it and it never go anywhere. They have a right to a speedy trial. What's with the speedy trial? Has anybody put in a motion to say, hey, you need to drop it or try it now because I have a right to a speedy trial? Where's that? Do they have a decent lawyer? What's happening?
They do now have good legal representation, and my understanding is they're pursuing all of those avenues to get that done. We're also pursuing putting the same kind of public pressure on the officials in the criminal case that we did on the officials.
Who's the prosecutor?
On that, I don't know. I could find out, but I don't have.
We need to start writing letters to that prosecutor because this is absurd. They need to charge them. Bring them to, they've already charged them. They need to bring them to trial or let them go. Otherwise, the children are just separated from their family forever. They at least did get some of their visitation back. Is that correct?
They can now see their children whenever they want to. There is no limitation on that. There's no preconditions for that. The only thing that's still the only restriction in place is they can't live with them, and I believe they can't go to the property. That may not even be true. They may just not be able to. They have to live with the aunt and uncle. So that they're back home with family, and or they're with their aunt and uncle. They're with family, and Matt and Taki can see them whenever they want to. They can take them places. They can do. And
they are allowed to see them each other now, so that they must have won that bail.
They live together. Yeah, we got the judge to drop those bail conditions.
Wow. That bail condition, by the way, I think they have a case there to sue for interrupting their marital status. Like I don't think the government can do that, right? Doesn't the government on your certificate, don't you have to go through the whole governmental process of divorce before they can separate you? They can't separate a married couple. The state can't step in and be like, you can't live here and you have to live away from each other and you can't even speak to each other. I've never heard of such a bail condition before in my life.
We've heard about it a couple of times, and what the justification that's being given is that they're accomplices in a crime against the children. Well, first of all, you've yet to actually charge them with anything or to indict them for anything. But second of all, even if they were accomplices in this crime against the children were gone. They were with foster families. So what is the risk of them being together at this point? The whole thing was insane, but we believe it's a pressure tactic. It is, the idea that, well, not only are we going to take your kids from you, we're going to take your spouse or your significant other from you. And, you get to decide how much pressure you want before you just give in and try to work with us. So I found out the district attorney and assistant district attorney in the Hernandez case are Penny A. Penn is the district attorney.
That's right. Penny Penn.
And
I remember that. We've written
and
Penny Penn.
Caroline Yee is the assistant district attorney. I can't say who the prosecutor is. There is no prosecutor because there's no trial and there's no indictment. They haven't actually been indicted. They haven't gone to there's been no trial for this. There's just this pending case that they hold over their heads, which is what the family court uses as justification to take the children.
How can they do this? I'm sorry, but this is a violation of your right to face your accuser. It's in the Constitution. It is one of the, you have a right to a public trial. You have a right to speedy. They must have gone past speedy already. They were, is it that you don't start counting until they set the actual hearing? They had a bond hearing. So where the hell is the trial?
Yeah, exactly. And what we're seeing is that in many states, they are arguing in front of their courts and in front of legislators that are looking to reform this. They're arguing, well, because what's happening is they're taking children, which should be reserved as a criminal punishment. They're doing that in a family court, which has a completely different standard of evidence and discovery and everything else. It's all but arbitrary in most states. It's essentially operating as like this sort of unconstitutional administrative tribunal. And so what happens is the courts argue, the family courts argue, well, we're not punishing them. We're not, that's reserved for the criminal courts. We're not punishing them. We're just deciding if the children are safe or not. Well, but you're taking the children, and any loving parent, if you said, hey, would you rather do, 5 years in prison or never see your kids again? There's no contest which one they would choose, right? And so the problem is, if there's an exigent circumstance where the child must be taken, and then we'll figure out later if there's enough evidence to keep the child, okay, fine. But there needs to be a time limit, like, a matter of hours or days that the child can be kept until there's enough evidence to go to a criminal court and decide whether to permanently take them. You can't take a child for exigent circumstances and then keep them indefinitely. The decision of whether or not to take children should either be done in a criminal court as part of criminal charges in a criminal trial, or if it is done in family court, they need to use the same standard for evidence and the same standard of proof that they would in a criminal trial. I've talked about
this so many times because child abuse is a crime. It is a crime under every state statute. And yet, in so many CPS cases, they are charged with abuse and neglect, but never charged criminally. So they don't have they don't have to be proven guilty. And so instead they're under a preponderance of evidence, which is so wrong for a crime. That's not the criminal standard, but they're giving, it's like a pseudo crime of this under I've been talking about this for years. This is the thing that needs to be fixed. It would fix this whole thing. Every single person accused of child abuse or neglect should get a criminal trial. Not 100%. A family court trial. That's not where criminal courts should be. And if you're not going to charge them with child abuse or criminal neglect, then
give them their kids back.
Get the fuck out of here and give them back. If you don't have enough evidence to charge people with a crime and then let them go through the criminal process, then get out. This is absurd. Now, that's where the services come in, right? Where they're saying that they have all these services for people who may need it. Like if you're in poverty, well, then we help you get groceries. And I'm all for that. I'm all for that. If you have a dirty house problem, maybe we help you get somebody to help you clean it. But we are not going to be taking kids away from people who just need a little extra help or who just need parenting classes. That's the sort of thing that they should be worked with. And that's what family services should be doing. Everything else should be criminal, should be police activity, because those are crimes. It would solve
In
the whole
fact,
problem, Spike.
we believe that it increasingly looks like the moment that it crosses the threshold of looking like a criminal action, the Child Protective Services should be removed entirely. Because they're not law enforcers.
No,
and they don't have
they're not trained.
any kind of training and investigation or
Nope.
standard of evidence or chain
They
of
don't even
protection
know.
of evidence
They
or
do
any of that.
everything
Yeah.
on hearsay. They do everything on hearsay. They take
Yeah.
hearsay as gold. Like
Yeah.
hearsay, it doesn't matter. Some teacher can say something that your kid said, and suddenly you're guilty. There's no standard of evidence. There's no what can come into court, and hearsay can't come in. It all comes in. It's incredible. It all comes in. I've seen these things. It's absolutely terrible. So I was just looking at the Georgia Standard, and oh my God, you guys, look what I found. The right to a speedy trial does not apply until a person is formally charged, accused of a crime, or indicted. Now, they have been accused of a crime.
Yeah, they've been accused, they've been arrested, they've been charged. So that would already have started.
So it should have already started. So I just hope it's not gone. And they say that they, automatically waived it because they didn't contest. I don't know how long it is. I'm trying to find how long speedy is in Georgia. And I'm looking at here's the code. So the 2020 Georgia Code, Title 17, Criminal Procedure, Chapter 7, demand for trial, here it is, 17-7-170, demand for speedy trial. But as I scan through this, I don't see a time limit. Like what?
And many states are like this where they don't actually have it, and it's being decided on a case-by-case basis.
Oh, that's
by
absurd.
The courts. Of course, it's absurd, and it extends the whole the lack of speediness. So now you're in an appeals court fighting this, and God knows when they get to it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Now they may have an actual time limit, but if there's not one there,
there's not one in the. Look, I've gone through here looking for an actual is it 6 months? Is it 60 days? Is it 200?
Yeah.
I don't see any numbers in here leading me to believe we actually have a standard. So if you are a Georgia attorney out there, if you're a criminal attorney and you can tell me what is the speedy in Georgia, I really want to know what is speedy trial, because this is outrageous. That would be my tack on fighting it. I would say you violated my client's right to a speedy trial, so you have to let this go. So I would really like to hear from anybody in Georgia who, if you're a lawyer there, please let me know. My email address, I'll throw it up on the screen for you if you want to write to me and tell me what speedy is in Georgia. I would appreciate that. meganfox.writer@protonmail.com. And Spike, that maybe make a note to talk to their attorneys about finding out what is the hard and fast deadline, because I know there is one. There has to be one.
I will ask that, and I'll also see if they are in the process of challenging it on those grounds. They have a very good after having some fights with their initial legal help that they were getting. They now are being helped by very good attorneys in Georgia. I suspect that they're exploring multiple avenues, including this one, but I can certainly find out. But the thing is, at least with the Hernandez family, I mean, they still have this looming thing over them. But the reality is, all the evidence is that the government screwed up, not them. So at least
that they are back with their children.
They're back with family. They're able to see their children. Some of these parents haven't seen their children in
how about the
weeks or
Sullivans?
months.
Do the Sullivans have any visitation?
I believe that they are able to get limited visitation with their children. And I'm trying not to confuse them with another family in Georgia, the Timms family, that also have children.
Oh my God, I
staying
forgot about
with Kim. Yeah,
I forgot about the Timms family. Why don't you update me on that one? I would like to hear what's going on in that case.
Yeah, so that case is we're still waiting to have it taken to court again, and the Timms, we've helped them to find some good legal counsel. I think they also were having some issues with legal counsel, and
were they in Georgia as well?
They're in Georgia as well. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to your website now, so let me pull up your website. If you guys want to follow these cases through You Are the Power, and also if you want to volunteer, because they need state volunteers in every state to help get the effort out to alert the public, and also do letter writing campaigns, pressure campaigns against governments that are doing these terrible things. You should definitely log on to youarethepower.net. And if you want to go up to the cases, these are their active cases that they're covering. Now, you guys do a whole lot of work, I know, and you do great work vetting all of these cases, making sure that they're, that this is legitimate. Boy, you have new cases that I haven't even heard of.
Yeah.
And this is in Maricopa, the Bentham case?
Yes. So Cheyenne Bentham has had two children. Her baby boy died, and he died from I believe, a febrile seizure disorder. She was never charged with anything, but there was a particular investigator who just wouldn't let it go, and who continued to harass. This is a mourning mother who's lost her baby boy, and has a detective just constantly haranguing her and harassing her. She actually went, Cheyenne and her family, they actually went and got an independent autopsy, which confirmed what the county's autopsy confirmed, which was that there was no evidence of abuse, and that that he died from unfortunately from natural causes. The detective went to the father of Cheyenne's older, I believe, older child, and said, we're investigating, and very likely that there's abuse here. You need to petition to have to take her daughter from her. And to take your daughter for. And so the father, who was being told that that the mother of his daughter had just killed her son, and that an arrest in incoming. All of this is false, by the way. I mean, there was no arrest. There was an investigation which has now been closed. At no point did anyone but this detective seriously think that she had abused her baby boy. But based on what she told him, he went to court and successfully got the daughter. And Cheyenne, at the same time that she is mourning her baby boy, is now having her daughter taken from her. And so we did get we won in this case. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office declined to press forward. All charges were dropped. We're actually now putting pressure on the sheriff's department to fire that detective, or at least to reprimand or to do something of punishment to this detective.
This is why
trying to derail a woman who was mourning the death of her baby son.
This is where I get really annoyed with Donald Trump for saying things like he wants to give all police officers immunity. I mean, why is he going off the rails? I don't want to go political, but I mean, this is a very good reason to bring up this immunity for police thing. I agree police should not be hindered in doing their jobs when they are doing their jobs. But when they go off the reservation and they violate the Constitution, they swore an oath to protect, and they act under the color of law, and they take your kid, and they fabricate evidence, or they abuse you on the road, or they use too much force, then I don't think they should get immunity. I don't even know why we're having this conversation. Does anybody think police ought to have immunity? Anybody?
And let's be clear about something. So there's two different things at play here, because a lot of people think qualified immunity protects officers and state employees when they're, over the course of doing their job, it unfortunately causes someone to suffer harm. So, like, for example, the example I hear a lot is, if a fire department is fighting a fire and it causes water damage in the neighboring property or something, that's not what qualified immunity. That's covered under scope of work. So a judge would laugh that out of court and say this is their
would
job.
Never go
they
forward.
Didn't break any law. Qualified immunity is only ever invoked when it has already been established that the law was broken and someone's rights were violated. Always and in all times, qualified immunity is the protection of an officer who it is already known broke the law and violated someone's rights. And not just an officer, child protective service worker,
any state government employee.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean judges get total immunity, which is outrageous. You have to
judges and prosecutors and politicians get absolute immunity, which is insane. No one should have immunity when they've broken the law.
No one.
And no one should have immunity when they've knowingly violated someone's rights. And they'll use this. So a lot of people get confused by the verbiage. They'll say, "Oh, well, the only time that qualified immunity is ever invoked is when what hasn't been, established that violated someone's rights." Well, let me give a couple of examples of established. So there was in either Arkansas or Alabama, I forget which state, there were two officers who arrested someone. And while he was handcuffed, they sicked their canine
Oh,
officers on
Jesus.
him and mauled him, and he suffered permanent all sorts of permanent injury as a result of it. But they were given qualified immunity because there was only one other case in that same federal court district where someone where an officer had used a canine officer on someone who was already detained. But in that first case, the person was lying down, and in this case, he was sitting up on the curb. That's what well-established means. You have lawyers in court. There was another case where where officers were had stolen coins. They had stolen these rare coins. Stolen. They committed an actual crime of theft, and they got qualified immunity because the only other cases they could find of officers stealing was of actual money,
That's outrageous.
like legal tender, and these weren't
this is
considered
why
legal tender.
I cannot take anyone seriously who says we need to give cops more immunity or protect their immunity. It's like, no, if they're doing their job according to the rules and the laws, then they won't need it. They don't need to be held, up to a special standard or given special rights. Look at what's happening in Boston. These Boston cops, oh my God, the Karen Reed trial. Now we've got the other one, the Sandra Birchmore. These cops use their power to set up a suicide to set up a murder to look like a suicide. They passed her around like a sex object, a 15-year-old girl, and got away with it for years and years and years. No immunity. None. They can't have any immunity.
Immunity encourages bad action. If I told you could do whatever you wanted and would never get in trouble, you're not necessarily going to go out and start, murdering people, but you might, you're going to speed, you're going to do, little things here and there or whatever, and you go, hey, there's nothing that can happen to me. But if I tell a population of people, an entire subgroup of people, you won't get in any real trouble. And you'll have the best legal teams fighting on your behalf. It'll be
with the unfettered power of the state and their limitless bank accounts, because they're coming out of our pockets. They will outspend you. They will. There's nothing you can do against them. This is an outrageous offense against freedom. It's an outrageous offense against Americans. Tell me about this family. Spike, Damani Clark and Shelby Whiting Clark. So this is another Wolfson. Is this also Barbara Knox case?
I don't believe so. This was another one. I can look up who their doctor was.
It looks like they were at Wolfson Children's Hospital, though.
It was
the same one.
Yeah, that was at Wolfson's. Hold on one second.
And again, it's so their little one had metabolic bone disease too. Same thing, poor bone mineralization and ossification. These are the kids that are in real danger. And by the way, if you ever find yourself in this situation with a kid with these metabolic bone disorders, my advice would be make sure that, and this isn't medical advice, but this is what I would do. I would make sure I had a specialist immediately. Although, how do you even find out? If the very first time you're taking your kid in because you think there's something wrong and they sick a child abuse pediatrician on you, most of these families never even had time to get a specialist.
Yeah.
And they not specialists.
They have to get one after the fact. So with the Hernandez family, they actually had to fight and spend thousands of dollars fighting in court to get their own children's medical records from them. The state fought tooth and nail. And it's obvious why. Because as soon as they get the medical evidence, it shows. When You Are the Power takes on these causes, I do want to talk about the Whiting Clark family, but when You Are the Power takes on these cases, we spend usually between 40 to 60 hours vetting these causes. We don't just, take these willy-nilly. We look and we want to make sure if we're taking on these causes, we don't want to inadvertently be helping an actual abusive family or an actual person that's committed some crime. And so we look through it. But what we find is that when we take on these causes, it's because we vetted them and found that there was no evidence of wrongdoing on the part of the accused and tremendous evidence of wrongdoing or neglect on the part of the government. What we often find is that the arresting officers, their investigation basically consisted of asking the child abuse pediatrician, putting it on a report and saying, all right. In fact, in the case of the Hernandez family, the Child Protective Services went to their home and concluded that there was no problem here. They concluded there was no evidence of wrongdoing in the home, and that the older daughter, Aria, seemed to be a happy and well-adjusted child that was being well treated. The next day they took her too. So it's insane. But Damani and Shelby Whiting Clark, their 1-year-old daughter Anaria was after all sorts of pregnancy complications. Once she was born, it was determined that both Damani, the father, and Shelby, the mother, they carry something called the alpha thalassemia gene. That's why I wanted to look this up, because I remember it was a very complex thing, and it's an inherited condition. It was passed down to Anaria, and so it caused restricted blood flow to her placenta and caused intrauterine growth restriction.
Oh, that's really scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. It's additionally scary when the state's trying to use this as a reason to steal your child. And so I believe what ended up happening, her eye was swollen, and there was swelling that were 3 red dots. They were accused of abusing their daughter. It turned out to be a bug bite.
Oh my God, bug bite.
But so thankfully, because they realized it was a bug bite, that dropped, but it was on their file that was, that there was a concern. It was a bug bite. So later, Anaria, they heard Anaria's arm pop, and so they actually wanted for her arm to be X-rayed. The doctors refused. She was taken to Wolfson's, and Dr. Rebecca Rodriguez Poe diagnosed the fractures as egregious physical abuse. There is now all sorts of evidence that this was not from abuse, that it was because of this inherited gene condition. In fact, while in foster care, Anaria's leg popped, and then they did an X-ray. They went to do an X-ray, but DFAC stepped in and said, "Oh no, X-rays aren't medically necessary." So while the child's in foster care, they're refusing to actually further test and diagnose her, because it would destroy their case. If it shows that she's progressively getting worse and nowhere near her parents, then that destroys their case that there was abuse. It's clearly being caused by a medical condition. But yeah, so it was Wolfson's, but it was not Barbara Knox. But remember, Barbara Knox, part of the investigations into Barbara Knox's other places that she worked at, Alaska Cares and the one in Wisconsin whose name escapes me, she was pressuring her colleagues to also misdiagnose cases as abuse. So it might be possible with this Dr. Rodriguez that Barbara Knox is putting the screws to her. I don't know this, but I know the previous history is that she pressured colleagues, and many of them ended up resigning so that they didn't have to work with her anymore. Right. And so it's at least it would not be surprising if it turned out that Barbara Knox was pressuring child abuse pediatricians at Wolfson's to do the same.
This is so upsetting. But what is the status of their case now? How is it going? It looked like what it said in here was that they were trying to take the kids to have them adopted. So what is the state
case? The last I can see here in our file is that it's still pending. So I assume that means that they're waiting for an actual court case. We have successfully gotten many people to contact the officials involved. And in fact, if you go to youarethepower.net/GA, you can actually contact Governor Kemp and other officials to help us put pressure to put an end to this. This is not going to stop. We're going to be playing endless games of whack-a-mole with this family, with the Clark family, with the Hernandez family, with the Sullivan family, the Timms family, and frankly, with other families, not just in Georgia, but around the country. The Sanders family, Jocelyn and Josiah Sanders, they were in Texas. The Benton family was in Arizona. This is not going to end.
Well, tell me, you've been trying to get a meeting with Governor Kemp for a while.
Yeah.
Is there any movement there? Are they responding to you at all?
We've been in talks with people on his team, but he has not agreed to meet with us.
What about Senator Ossoff? Have you met with Senator Ossoff yet? Because he has been a very outspoken critic of DCF in Georgia.
We have not had a meeting with Senator Ossoff. We have actually reached out to him, and yeah, I mean, whatever you want to say about him politically, otherwise, Senator Ossoff was an early critic of defects. Actually, tried to bring it up at the federal level, because
He's
this
the
is
only one I know of
this
in
is
the
a
whole
federal
damn
level. This is a
country.
violation of people's rights.
He's the only one I know of in the whole damn country, and Marsha Blackburn too, who care about this, seem to care about DCF and what they're doing, and they're the only ones I've seen on a national level holding hearings. So Senator Ossoff and Marsha Blackburn get my respect for even calling the hearings in the first place and letting families speak and putting the DCF director on the hot seat. What's going to come of it, I don't know, but I think that the pressure campaign should continue with Ossoff because he at least seems to care about this issue.
Yeah, it clearly is something he cares about. He brought it up even before we had heard about it. He was someone that had been talking about it early. Thomas Massey at one point actually brought up in Congress, questioned the constitutionality of how these family courts are operating. They are taking children, which by any reasonable definition is both taking and punishment, but without any criminal standard.
Criminal proceeding. Yeah,
these courts are arguing in court. In these appeals courts, they're arguing we're not punishing the parents. That's up to the criminal courts. We're just
that's
deciding
bullshit.
Whether or not their parents can. Of course,
no. The Supreme Court has said, and I don't remember which case it was, but I have it memorized, that separating children and parents is akin to a death sentence. It is the same thing in the eyes of our Supreme Court. It is the same thing, that terminating parental rights is the same as imposing a death sentence. That cannot possibly keep happening without actual accountability in a law of a criminal court with a higher standard and burden of proof. That this is being done all across this country with people saying, well, you can't take a chance that kids are going to die. You realize that CPS is killing kids all the time. They're killing kids by not taking the ones out of the homes that they should, because they're being abused. They're losing kids. Missouri lost 1,000 children in the foster care system. Don't know where they went. Georgia lost over 1,500 kids in the foster care system. Don't know where they went. 60% of the kids in the foster care system end up in sex trafficking by our own statistics, by our State Department. If you have a problem with that stat, go talk to the State Department. 60% of the kids in that they get in sex trafficking stings came from the foster care system. You explain that. You explain how they are doing such a great job, and we should just continue letting them do it when they have statistics like that.
In New Hampshire, they're I forget I think it's DCYF. Their version of Child Protective Services. They got caught running a child sex trafficking operation out of their building.
Oh, for God's sake. That's not the first time. There was another one in Maricopa County. And since then, by the way, I will say that Maricopa County, I know some people who have been hired since then to clean up some of that mess in the children's services area. And their new, I should show it to you. I have it somewhere. Their new supervisor there has new rules about when and how to behave and take children and when not to. And it's one of the best things I've seen so far that actually protects people's rights. Now, whether they're implementing it across the board or not, I don't know. But in Maricopa County, they had the same problem where it wasn't the social workers doing it, but they kept giving kids to the same foster care parent who ran a literal sex trafficking ring, and they did it over and over and over. He had something like he had something like more than 70 kids in his care, and it ended up he got sued by one of the victims, and he sued the state for $15 million. And I think that lawsuit just went away. I was never able to find out what the hell happened to it. So who knows? But it's a bad track record these people have.
We have emails leaked to us from defects, where emails between workers talking about how, trying to find emergency housing for a child that was living in their office, or was
that happens all the time.
A 12 or 13-year-old who was living in a hotel room that they put them up in
by themselves.
If you or I had a 12-year-old child and left them in a hotel room, our child would be taken from us.
But they can do it.
And then they'd put them in a hotel room. And this would be bad enough if we knew for certain that all these children were taken out of terrible conditions, and yes, it's very sad that this is happening to them, and they need more resources, but at least they were taken out of these horrific, abusive families, it is very likely in many of these cases that they were taken from completely innocent, loving families that had done absolutely nothing wrong. We don't know. We don't know. And this isn't, it's good to see reforms. It's good that we're fighting these cases on individual bases. But at the end of the day, until we fix the funding problem and the standard of evidence problem, we're always going to be playing catch up and whack-a-mole with these cases. We have to stop tying funding to a specific outcome. However it's funded, it needs to be by case or by...
There are some states, Spike, where the number of children taken from parents has to increase or be the same or higher. Well, I think higher, or they lose their funding for the next year.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
That's insane. I've seen it in writing. I've seen it. I've gone over it on this channel where it shows you they've incentivized taking more children than they did last year, or they lose their funding. Making the state justify its existence by violating more families' rights is a very bad idea. You will always get more of it when you incentivize that.
If you subsidize apples, you get more apples. If you subsidize coffee, you get more coffee beans. If you subsidize a specific diagnosed outcome, you're going to get that over and over again. And it's very likely that the reason that their funding is tied to that is because they have a contract with either somewhere in the foster care vendor system, whether it's the visitation facilities or something else, that guarantees there will be a certain increase in use over each year. We know that there were some states that had agreements with private prison systems that their prisoner population would increase by a certain percentage every year or every quarter. And so they would go and they would tell the prosecutors, you must get convictions or guilty pleas and that come with a minimum amount of sentencing, or else you're going to lose your funding because we have this contract we have to fulfill. So whether or not the person's innocent or not, I mean, you want to talk about, liberty is supposed to be this blind person holding scales. Instead, what we have is someone who has the blindfold off completely and is looking at a spreadsheet and trying to figure out, how many more they got to put on this side to be able to fund the outcome that they're being forced to give. It is insane. And until the funding mechanism stops and is no longer tied to a specific outcome, and until the question of whether or not the children are taken permanently or put in foster care is put in the criminal court system where it belongs. Again, if there's some exigent circumstance where they decide the child needs to be taken right now, okay, fine. Then you have 72 hours or 4 days or whatever. You have a certain number of days to have enough evidence to now take them to court, criminal court, and make a more permanent thing, either foster care or whatever, and actually indict them and begin trial for them, or you give the kids back. Because if you don't have enough evidence that it would make it through a court of law, then there's absolutely no reason that the children should not be back in their home.
No reason at all. Let's talk about the Timms family. So quick overview of what happened in this case and then an update on where they are.
Yeah. So the Timms family, and I apologize, we work on so many of these. I don't want to misspeak on one of these cases and be talking about something. So it's a lot easier for me to pull these ones up.
Yeah, no, you guys, you're doing amazing work, by the way. I mean, you're one of
we work on so many of these and they're so similar that then we just want to make sure that we're not, that I'm not telling you, facts from another.
Yeah, I'm just happy that you exist and that You Are the Power exists, because before you were around, that I saw you were working in these cases, there wasn't really a place to go where it was all organized and, there's like a real movement to try and help these families. It was more like piecemeal, and I would cover the ones that I could, and a bunch of them would go through the cracks. People wouldn't believe it either. They'd be like, this couldn't possibly be happening. These people must be abusers, and I think that what you've done in organizing it the way you have, and it has been really effective, one of the most effective campaigns I've seen.
Yeah, what we're doing is And we don't, it's funny, we work on a lot of these cases that are, children being taken unjustly by child protective services. We work on people whose homes are being taken with eminent domain abuse or with zoning code abuse. We deal with people whose elder abuse, where
Sure,
people's
there's a lot of that too.
grandparents and great grandparents are being forcibly removed from their homes because
Yep.
on the other end, they, a lot of these states have contracts with, elder care facilities. And if they don't put a certain number of at-risk seniors in those homes, then they lose their funding. And so they come up with reasons to take your grandfather or your great grandmother out of your home. And we deal with cases like that as well. What we do is we're finding people who are not being respected as they're not being treated like human beings. They're not being treated like individual human beings. They're being treated like a cash cow. And it doesn't matter what has to be done to that family, how much they need to be destroyed, how much these children's lives need to be ruined. None of that matters as long as they get their funding. And so we find these cases, we bring them to the public, we create calls to action, we find out the specific people who are doing this. The specific officials that are involved in this, and we create pressure campaigns. And the pressure campaign is very simple. The facts show you're in the wrong. You know you're in the wrong. We know you're in the wrong. We know you know that you're in the wrong. Back off and do the right thing. And we've had a roughly 90% success rate. We're
That's
either
amazing.
partial or full victory on these things. So in the case of Brady and Carrie Timms, their child started having health issues. Jameson started having health issues at 6 weeks old. And they took them to one hospital, who then took them to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Children's Hospital of Atlanta, where Dr. Stephen Messner, the same doctor that has unjustly claimed abuse in the case of the Hernandez family, called it abuse. I'm going through. I believe this was Ehlers-Danlos. Jameson has Ehlers-Danlos, and so does
got
Carrie.
diagnosed. Yeah,
Yep.
same thing.
And
These Ehlers-Danlos families are under such assault in our medical communities. What the hell is wrong with these doctors that they haven't been trained that this is a possibility? Maybe it's not the answer for everything, but my God, rule it out first.
Yeah, it's insane. And rule it out first. And once you know, that should be the end of it. Unless you have additional evidence of abuse, then it should be, oh, oops, mistake made. Sorry about that. Here's your kid back. There should be absolutely no continuation of this. I have a friend named Thomas Queter, and he has a disorder called osteogenesis imperfecta, which causes all sorts of...
They used to call that brittle bone.
Yeah, it's a connective tissue disorder, and I think he was at one point told he wouldn't live past 8 or 9 years old. He's now I think he's just turned 40, and he runs a nonprofit that helps other people that have similar conditions as his. But when he was a child, the doctors were constantly threatening, and Child Protective Services were constantly threatening his mother, and saying, we're going to take your child. We think that you're abusing him. Well, it turns out he has a connective tissue disorder. Thankfully, she was able to successfully fight that back.
Imagine being a sick child. Imagine being a sick child and having an underlying disorder and then being taken from your parents on top of it. And your entire life turned upside down and you're not getting any better. I mean, it's an outrageous offense that this keeps happening. Yeah,
it's insane. It is insane. So in the Timms case, we've helped them to get better legal representation. So that is still a pending case. But this is,
Has their visitation been improved? Are they moving away from adoption and all of that garbage yet?
I don't see that in their file. I'm not sure on that. I know with this specific thing, they were having as much of a battle with their legal representation as they were with the state. So we've helped them on that. And unfortunately, the person that I would contact to get more details is actually at the court for the Sullivan case right now. That's why I keep checking my phone to see.
Yeah, do we have any updates?
I'm looking. Yeah, he hasn't written me yet. They're probably still in court, but so yeah, what we see in all of these cases, the common thread is that it's the moment that it becomes obvious or likely that this is because of a chronic health condition, And especially when in pretty much every single one of these cases, Child Protective Services would go to their home and determine that there was no evidence of any wrongdoing. Like there was no evidence that the home was in a shambles, or that the children were being treated poorly at home, or that there wasn't food in the fridge or anything like that. The moment that there's no actual evidence, you got to give the kid back. Like we live in a country that has a presumption of innocence. And again, if there is an exigent circumstance, then where the child has to be taken temporarily, it needs to be very temporary. It needs to be measured in hours or a day or two, how long the child can be taken. And as soon as it's been established that there's no evidence that would meet the threshold of taking them to a criminal trial, the kid needs to go back home. And I know some people that are hearing this will say, yeah, but that might lead to some people, some children that are being abused going home because the parents were able to cover their tracks. Well, but that's already happening.
That's already happening. Yeah,
because they're being incentivized to look for abuse cases, not to call a case as abuse whether they are or not. They look for the easiest people to go after, which are very often the unsuspecting innocent ones who are more than happy to answer any question that the police have, and who don't lawyer. They're much easier to go after. So it actually reaches a point where in this kind of a system, it actually makes more sense to fight back as hard as you can, even if you're guilty, because they'll possibly back off because they need to put more resources into grabbing as many innocent families as they can. It's insane.
This is so crazy. So with the Sullivans, they have good lawyers now, correct? So they've got good legal representation. They're in court today, and this court decision is going to decide whether or not they're going to be reunified, or if they're separate. This is not the parental termination hearing, is it?
I believe so. I believe this is where they're going to find out if they're keeping their children or not.
Oh God. I can't even.
It is,
I feel
the
really...
fact that there's literally all of the evidence is that it's what we know. Diana has Ehlers-Danlos, and the child Amelia, I believe it's either been confirmed or it's almost certain that she also has Ehlers-Danlos. We know that she has a variety of health conditions that she suffered during pregnancy as a result of Diana's Ehlers-Danlos. One of the common effects of Ehlers-Danlos is complications during pregnancy, because of how that affects them during pregnancy. It can affect the child. So even if she doesn't have Ehlers-Danlos, because Diana, the mother, has Ehlers-Danlos, it may have caused her to have so many developmental issues in utero that it's causing her to have other health conditions. But it's all but certain that she has Ehlers-Danlos too.
Have both of them been charged? I know he's been charged criminally, correct?
He has been charged. Corey has been charged. I do not believe Diana has been charged, but Corey has been charged. Again,
and is it the same thing? Is it the same thing with him? No trial date, no nothing, just charged and just sitting there?
Yeah, pending a criminal case. No, yeah.
How long has this been going on? Again, this speedy. Tell their lawyers, speedy trial. What the hell? This has been going on for a long time. How long? Yeah. When did they start investigating the Sullivans?
I'm looking that up right now. I believe it was 22, but that might be the Timms family. Hold on.
By the way, chat, if you have questions for Spike, it's easier to see if you send super chats. Those are definitely recommended and also appreciated. Thank you. You can send super chats, Cash Apps, Venmo, and it's running across the bottom of your screen to do so.
So this first started about a year ago. And in December of 2023, despite multiple conclusive independent medical opinions that to the contrary, that there was no abuse and that these can be explained by the conditions that we know that Amelia has, GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Thomas Kimmelblatt, who, as far as we can tell, did no real investigation at all, arrested Corey, and Corey was arrested and charged with first-degree cruelty to children and aggravated battery. There is no evidence of that. All the evidence is of a medical condition, and there's no evidence. Keep in mind, for everyone because people get caught up in the facts of this and forget how our system's supposed to work. Even if there was no evidence of no conclusive evidence of a medical condition, but there was also no conclusive evidence of abuse. The way our system is supposed to work is that
They should leave them alone.
They should leave them alone until they have enough to actually
until they have
try them.
evidence.
Yes.
But how can, see, this is what I don't understand. On what evidence is this judge moving for adopting these children out?
On the fact that Dr. Barbara Knox says conclusively that the child was being abused.
Has the judge been notified? Has he been notified by anybody that Barbara Knox has been fired and sued for this very thing all over the country? Alaska, Michigan, I think it was Michigan or Wisconsin.
Well, we've had thousands of people contact everyone involved to let them know that. I don't think this is that they don't know. I believe, and this is me giving my opinion, I don't have proof of this, but I believe that the patterns are pretty clear. That, when you have all the way down the pipeline, you have everyone pretending something is abuse, when there's not only no evidence of abuse, but there's copious amounts of evidence that this can be explained medically, and they continue to move forward. And it's not just in this one, egregious case, this one outlier case, but we're seeing it over and over and over again. It starts to look like a feature and not a bug. It starts to look like this is how they want it to work.
Right. What do we know about the judge in this case, in the Sullivan case? Have you done any research? Has anybody found out if this is a pattern with this judge too?
Let me see if we have the judge here.
Because sometimes, it does feel like in this case in particular, it might be partially that this judge is really dug in with these state actors and with the the experts. A lot of times, like the judge in the Hernandez case was very deferential to the state's witnesses, very deferential, and was just like, well, your expert says differently, but I believe the state, because, he's our guy.
And let's deferential is quite a way, is a very light way of putting that. The Hernandez family brought two medical experts who brought, however many hundreds of pages and imaging results and blood tests and everything else. And she would not admit that. What she admitted, and I believe her name is Heather Dunn. If I apologize to the Heather Dunns out there if her name isn't Heather Dunn, but the judge in that case, when the evidence she did admit was the child abuse pediatrician. It was not Messner. It was another one who showed up who had not actually seen Amelia. Was basically bringing Messner's notes and came to court and said, statistically, when you look at these kinds of injuries, statistically, these tend to be abuse. And when the attorney asked him to cite the source of that statistic, he said, you can look that up on the internet.
You can Google it.
That is what you can Google it. That's what the judge decided to solely allow as medical evidence, was a doctor that had not seen Amelia. Also, I believe was not familiar with the conditions osteogenesis imperfecta or neonatal rickets, which are the most likely causes of Amelia's injuries. Not Amelia's injuries, Emma's injuries. And basically, said, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure if you looked on the internet, it would probably say that I'm right. That's what was allowed,
insane.
Not the hundreds of pages of medical evidence from two medical experts.
Absolutely insane. This is insanity. And I wonder and I feel like this is a problem with family court judges. They work with the same people all the time. And there's this like water cooler environment where the judges, they're all coworkers. The guardians ad litem for the children, the caseworkers, the social work, they're in front of the same judges all the time. And they become like coworkers and they have a rapport. Then you're the outsider with your defense attorney, and your defense attorney may have gone in front of this judge before, but they're not there like the others are. They're not an arm of the state. And let's just be honest. The judge and all those people I just named are all being paid by the same people. They're all being paid by the state. How is it possible that a system like this could possibly be fair to the accused? It can't. It cannot be fair. I don't think that judges should be allowed. Frankly, this whole thing would be solved if it was just taken care of in criminal court, if we could get them to bring the trial.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, I mean, there are all sorts of examples of abuse by prosecutors in criminal court, but it's at least tempered by the fact that there's supposed to be a standard of evidence and
Right.
you know a much higher
Much higher burden.
threshold of a burden of proof. It is. There's none of that. It's entirely arbitrary. It is in
Hmm.
many cases completely left up to the judge to just decide. I mean, imagine if you've been accused of some capital crime, because like you said, and this has been confirmed in court. For most loving parents, saying you're never going to see your kids again is one step off of saying we're going to kill you. In
Yeah.
fact, many of them would rather be killed and the
Many of
other
them
parent still
have
have the
ended
child.
their own
That
lives
Yeah,
over it.
many of them ended
This
their own
is a
lives.
death sentence to parents. It is and
Yeah,
to children and to children. The enormity of a decision like this cannot be overstated. It is the worst decision, the most important decision that can be made in a parent and child's life. And the state
yeah,
should not be allowed to make it willy-nilly without a burden of proof that
yeah.
is a criminal standard. Period. Done.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine you've been tried, you're being tried for capital murder, but it's in family court. And they're deciding whether or not to execute you. And the judge, your attorney's going in front of the judge and saying, Your Honor, we have all this evidence that my client didn't do this. And the judge goes, I don't like that evidence.
I don't like
And
that
then
evidence.
the state brings up someone who goes, yeah, I mean, you look at these kinds of things and statistically, I think if you did like a Google AI search, you'd probably say that, this person's guilty. And they go, yeah, guilty, execute them tomorrow. That's what this is like. That's the equivalent of what's happening here. It absolutely needs to be handled in criminal court. If there is an exigent circumstance where they believe that this child's life is in immediate danger, then there needs to be a very short time frame that they can keep the child. And in that time, if they can't get enough evidence together to take them to criminal court, then the child needs to go back. They can keep an open investigation if they want to, and revisit it if they want to. But the taking of a child outside of a very temporary, time limited situation in an exigent circumstance, the long-term or permanent taking of a child should be treated the same way as any other punishment, and it should be adjudicated in an actual criminal court. That doesn't ensure that there won't still be abuses or
Right.
corruption or innocent people being found guilty or guilty people being found innocent. Those things, unfortunately, any system is going to have failures, but it's going to be a heck of a lot better than what we have right now.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. All right. So how can people help, Spike? Where do they go to? I know that my chat is really, they want to write letters, they want to do things. So how
Yeah.
can they help with the specifically, which cases need the most help right now and where should they go?
Yeah. So if you go to youarethepower.net, and you can click on our causes in the menu, that's going to have all of our most recent and active causes. You can go to each one of those and it will have the list of the people that you can contact in that case. We even have a wording template that you can use or borrow from, because some people, you're about to contact an official and all you want to say is, I hate you. Why are you doing this? This is terrible. But you may not have all the details of what you want to say, but we actually have we have a wording template that you can use or borrow from there. If you want to become a proactive part of this movement, then if you go to youarethepower.net, you can become a member today. Membership is as cheap as free, and we'd love to have you be a part of this. We have an app that you can download where you get push notifications that give you updates on all of our cases and our causes.
Oh, I
both
need
new and
that.
ongoing. Yeah.
What's it
yeah.
called?
It's called You Are the Power app. It's a members only app, but membership's free. Become a member at You Are the Power. You'll get an email. It'll tell you how you can download the app.
Cool.
It's available for Android and iPhone. We'd love to have everyone be a part of it. So you can start by going to youarethepower.net. And from there, you can become a member. You can find out about our causes, including who to contact about all of them. The more people that we have looking at this and contacting these officials and sharing it and mentioning these people, tagging these people on social media and letting them know that we're watching, the more success we have. As we continue to grow, our success grows, because now instead of having a few dozen people contact us, an out of control official, we sometimes have hundreds or even thousands of people contacting them. And it turns out the more sunlight you put on these things, the more likely you are to get a good outcome.
I've got an example up here on the screen of one of the templates of letters that You Are the Power provides. And so if you want ideas on what to write, they have those for you on each of the cases. This one's a good one to contact Governor Kemp and let him know about all these families in the state of Georgia, because many of these people are in Georgia. Governor Kemp needs to know how bad, how widespread, how systemic this problem really is. So make sure that you get on there at youarethepower.net, become a member, sign up, get the app, get the notifications. And you guys are really good at writing letters. Now, you guys know, I see that Lynn's in the chat says, is snail mail more effective? I personally think so. I think if you have the ability to write a letter in an actual envelope and lick a stamp and put it on there so that these people have to open up actual mail, I think that makes a big difference, because, it's very impactful when they see pieces of paper everywhere. That's when we do letter writing campaigns, I always tell people, send emails, but send a letter too. Or fax if you can, because you want to paper that office so that everybody knows, from the lowliest secretary in the place to the janitor, everybody knows that people are pissed off. That's what you want. You want everybody, not just the person answering the mail, to know. You want them all to know. You want them all talking about it. So yes, snail mail is always good. All right. Absolutely. So would you please let me know, Spike, when you get an update in the Sullivan case? Can you let me know so I can update my audience, because I know that they're going to be really interested to know that. But before we go, is there anything else that you wanted to share today before we say goodbye?
The one thing I'll say is, if you are as incensed by this as Megan and I are, and know that we've only just touched on a few of the cases we're working on, which are only a few of the people that this are being done to. If you'd like to be a part of putting an end to this for good, not just for these families, but for the entire system, join youarethepower.net.
Definitely do that today. Thank you so much for being here, Spike. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Take care. All right, everybody. We are going to, let me just give you a couple of updates about what I'm going to be doing. Then I'm going to be out of here for the rest of the day. I'll be on tonight with Tug on my channel. It is Tuesday with Tug here on this channel. We will be going over some of the What the Hales new updates. We also, because there were a bunch of new people who just came to this story, we're going to be looking at the Fish and Game Wildlife video and probably part 4 of Lynette's deposition. So that's going to be tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my channel with Tug. Those of you, make sure you go to youarethepower.net and sign up. I hope to see a lot of influx of new members over there, because it's very important, the work that Spike Cohen is doing. Make sure you follow him too on X. He is at Real Spike Cohen on X, and he's doing great work, so much great work on this medical kidnapping problem and the overreach of the state that we're seeing everywhere across this country. So please make sure that you do that. All right, everybody, take care. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you, and I'll see you tonight at, what did I say? 8. Oh, I need to find some place for you to go. Hold on. Let me see if I can redirect you somewhere. Make sure you sign up at meganfox.locals.com if you want to get notifications for when I'm going live. You'll get those for free. You can follow me for free. If you want the exclusive content that includes, laundry streams, cooking streams, cleaning tips, cleaning challenges, make sure that you sign up. It's $5 a month over there. And we do have live chats going, and we have a lot of fun over there. Let me see if I can send you somewhere. Who is live right now that you are interested in? We have, Mo in the deep end. She is talking about Sarah Boone. So I'm going to send you over to Mo. Please tell Mo that I said hello. And I will see you at 8 p.m. here on this channel. Don't forget, do your squats. We've been sitting here for an hour and a half, and we haven't done any squats. So I'm not, should we do them on the way out? No, I don't feel like doing them right now. I'm going to go do stretching. That's what I need to do. I need to do stretching, but you guys do your squats. I'll do mine later. All right. I'm looking for my outro. There it is.
I was lost. My world is near its end. I almost felt my head is full of a million choices. I am alive. I'm not here to pretend. My friends, my heart is filled with a million voices. Oh. choices. I am alive, I'm not here to pretend. I love my friends, my heart is filled with a million voices. Oh, this road has many choices, and my heart, million voices. Come next to me, my friend, embrace the sky. I'm not afraid to fly, it's not the time to say goodbye.